Hi, everyone, and welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. As you all know, I retired from IBTTA at the end of 2024. I'm back one more time for a special edition of Café IBTTA to pass the baton to today's guest, Kathryn Clay. Kathryn is the new executive director and CEO of IBTTA. Her first day was January 6th, so officially, this is her third week on the job. Kathryn most recently served as the president and CEO of the International Liquid Terminals Association, where she drove record revenue growth, spearheaded industry first advocacy initiatives, and supported innovation, safety, and environmental compliance. Her impact earned her recognition as one of the 100 top influencers in the global terminals industry by Storage Terminals. Before that, Kathryn worked for the American Gas Association, the Drive Natural Gas Initiative, and the Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers. Kathryn also served on Capitol Hill as professional staff on the U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources and the U.S. House Committee on Science and Technology. Kathryn, welcome to Café IBTTA and your new role as Executive Director and CEO of IBTTA.
Well, thank you so much, Pat. And it's such a pleasure to be with you and to be joining this amazing community of professionals. I've already, in just 2.5, going on 3 full weeks, been able to meet so many people. I had the good fortune to be part of the board strategic planning initiative in December, and then travel in person to Coral Gables for the board meeting and Council of Platinum Sponsors activities there. It's just been amazing how welcoming everyone has been, how many offers I've gotten from people saying, look, I don't have an agenda. I just want to help you succeed. I'd love to talk with you about how this industry works, what's important, what we see for the future. So I know many of you that are on this call are probably some of those people who have offered that guidance and support. So I just want to say thank you and just say how delighted I am to be joining you.
Fantastic. Well, Kathryn, welcome once again. This is Cafe IBTTA, where we drink coffee and talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And what could be more interesting and relevant than getting to know IBTTA's new CEO? I've had the privilege of speaking with you, Kathryn, frequently over the last 6 weeks, and I know that you've hit the ground running to advance all the great work of IBTTA. We are taking your questions and comments, and we want to get started right away. If you have a question, please put it in the chat and select all attendees. And I'm going to start by asking a few questions of my own. Kathryn, I'm delighted to hear that the reception so far has been really positive, and I'm not surprised at all. It's a wonderful community. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your background. In your career, you've advocated for several industries in the energy and transportation sectors. And I wonder if you could tell us, what experience do you think you will draw on most as you begin your new role?
Mm. And Pat, I want you to say I have my coffee here. I'm doing this to script. I'm a coffee drinker, and so I love the motif. I love what you've created here, and I love how it also continues that sense of community. This is such a great little microcosm of what I felt so far, being with everyone. It feels like just meeting friends for coffee. So I'll say, and I shared this in Coral Gables with those of you that were there, that I really feel like there were elements from each of my jobs that helped me prepare for this role. I know that in the selection process, one of the things the search committee shared with me is that they were very interested in how we, as an association, can grow our voice on Capitol Hill. And they were looking for someone that could really dig into that and build on all the success, Pat, that you and the team have built, all this great knowledge, and extend it even further and use it for even greater influence with the power brokers of Washington. So, and I should say potentially within the states as well. That's something that we've had some interesting internal discussions about whether ILTA, IBTTA should be working more to do more with state policy. But I'll just recap briefly. I'm a scientist by training. I'm not afraid of the technical details, and in fact, I thrill to them. In my various roles, have always been a transition, a translator between the technical and the policy, and that role has persisted throughout the different phases of my career. So I did work on Capitol Hill. I worked on both the House side and the Senate side. I worked in personal offices and on committee staff. I work for Republicans and Democrats. So I am bipartisan, bicameral, all the things. And I have a very balanced approach. That has helped me throughout my career. I think it's going to continue to help lead IBTTA because we are such a bipartisan group. Needing to have good, solid, well-functioning, safe, reliable infrastructure helps everyone. And there's no reason that should be a partisan issue. That's just good for America. I think so. The Capitol Hill experience, I would point to in particular the scientific training and then learning how to translate technical issues into compelling, accessible, plain English so that you're not trying to snow people with technical detail. You're trying to bring them along. And that's how we're going to have our edge. I'd say that, while I haven't worked in this industry before, I've worked in industries that taught me lessons I believe will be helpful and relevant. I worked for the auto industry and the American gas industry, as Pat mentioned. The International Liquid Terminals Association is, in a sense, that's about multimodal hubs for bulk commodities, but it's still about transportation. And a lot of the problems are about logistics and making things work. So I think, Pat, that's kind of a broad overview, but I think that there are little pieces from each of those experiences that I believe are going to help me make a contribution here.
That's wonderful. Kathryn, we promised folks that we would accept their comments and questions, and there's one fun one in here from Joel Falk. He says, "Is that a Bob Ross behind you, Kathryn Clay?"
So I'll tell you. So I'm actually coming to you live from my family home in Michigan, and this is a photograph that my brother took. It isn't Michigan, though. It is a picture taken that he took in Alaska, but it has the same kind of woodsy, rural feel that's actually part of where I grew up. So yeah. So that's though I am a fan of our favorite PBS artist, Bob Ross. So thank you for mentioning that.
That's great. Well, Kathryn, I know where you are is a beautiful part of the world, so it's great to see a little piece of that behind you. So let's talk a little bit more about some of your initial impressions, Kathryn. Over the last 6 weeks since the board elected you to the role, I'm sure you've had a total immersion to IBTTA and tolling and road usage charging. What are some of your initial observations so far about people, issues, culture, strategy, the members, anything at all?
Great. Well, yeah, thank you, Pat. Well, there's been so much, so I'll focus on just a couple of things. I think that one thing that I'll comment on that this is now my fourth trade association that I've worked in, and they're all different. They all have their cultures, and one thing that I think is often fundamental is that trade associations are reflections of the industries that they serve. So, how competitive your members are, are they competitors with each other? Are they collaborators with each other? That fundamentally colors the kind of interactions that you have, the feel of the meetings that you have, the way your committees work. And I think that I can say I've worked with pretty much two of the extremes because I worked for the auto industry on one hand, and I can tell you that there just are no fiercer competitors than automakers. They literally are competing driveway to driveway. They're all about market share. If there's a policy that improves everybody's sales, that doesn't matter. What matters is what's the percentage it benefited me versus my competitor, right? Because it's all about market share. That's the mindset. So it was interesting, very innovative, and it drives a lot of good things, that kind of culture. But it has its downsides because as a trade association professional, you're limited in how much they can share with you because they know how much you are sharing with their competitors as well. On the other side, when I went to the American Gas Association, that's the National Trade Association for the investor-owned natural gas utilities. So while they're private entities, they are, by definition, not competing. They
Mm.
have their
Mhm.
territories established by their public utility commissions. They absolutely may not compete. And
Right.
so that culture meant that we were able to take a much deeper dive into the intricacies of how they work. They were able to lift the curtain more and share with us as the trade association team how they made decisions, how their businesses worked, how they were looking at innovation and technology. And so that was a completely different bookend of the system. What I think is really fascinating about IBTTA so far is I've been trying to figure out, well, where in that spectrum is IBTTA? Because the more competitive side, that tends to give you a lot of interesting dynamics, a lot of innovation, and competitors are trying to come up with new innovative approaches. But the downside is you can't have as open a dialogue. Um, the good news is, I think amazingly, I found a trade association that has the best of both worlds. And I think that's because we have our agency members, our primary operating members who are not competitors. And so that creates the foundation where we're able to have these open and honest and collaborative and mutually building conversations, which is so I think just gratifying personally to be part of, but also makes us all more effective because we're able to work together. But then because we work so closely, closer than I've seen at other trade associations, with the what other trade associations would call the vendor community or the supplier community, that we call our Council of Platinum sponsors or sponsor community. We what I've seen so far is that IBTTA works so closely with those folks and embraces their input into all the decision making. That's where the competition is happening. That's where innovation is being driven in a fundamental way. And so that brings the innovative spark into all of our conversations. So that's a really fundamental observation I have about IBTTA so far, is that if you've looked at other trade associations and their dynamics, um, you understand that what IBTTA has is really special, and I think is probably pretty rare because the circumstances that allow us to have it are pretty unique.
Kathryn, that is a wonderful summation of some of your first impressions of IBTTA, especially with respect to collaboration and competition. And I don't think I've heard anyone articulate sort of the essence of IBTTA better than you have. So just now. So well done. And I know the members really appreciate that as well. Kathryn, it looks like you have an old friend here who's joined, John Howes, who says he's worked with you over the years, and he says you'll do a great job at IBTTA. Tell
Oh
us
my
about
gosh.
John.
John, thank you for joining. Yes, I had the pleasure of working with John in several of my past roles, and he is himself an innovative leader and thinker. He actually is in the battery space, and very forward leaning thinker. So, John, thank you for being here.
Kathryn, you've done a wonderful job of sort of summarizing your initial first impressions and giving us a little consolidated learning about, what's happened with you so far. One of your assignments in the search and selection process was to give a speech to the search committee as if it were the end of your first year. So I wonder if we could just for a moment imagine it's now January of 2026. What are some of the accomplishments that you are most proud of at IBTTA?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. That was a really challenging but thoughtful approach the search committee had, and the challenge was to try to put yourself in place of 1 year in the future, and that that gave me a lot of perspective. I really did enjoy the exercise. I'd say that I could point to a couple of things for this group. And I know that the purpose of the Cafe IBTTA is not to get, so much down in the weeds of our issues, but one of the issues that I talked about at some length was the NextNav petition.
Hmm.
Because even though that issue is, as I now understand, rapidly evolving behind the scenes, not even visible at that point fully on the IBTT website, what IBTTA had on the website was enough for me to get a sense of the import of the issue. And that issue I predicted in that role, as a candidate, was going to be a major industry challenge. And as I got on board, I realized that that prediction was absolutely shared by the board. And we do still have some technical questions that we have to address about how extensive the challenge is. But I think no matter what we find through the technical studies that we're trying to get underway, we are going to find that there is a significant and unprecedented challenge to our systems, whether that is a manageable challenge or a deeply untenable challenge remains to be seen. So I would hope that I could say a year from now, in January 26th, that we had answered the need, that we'd met the need, we'd found the technical information, and we'd either successfully forestalled the challenge from NextAv and its disruptive worst case scenarios that we've imagined, or we had been able to satisfy ourselves that the FCC was going to limit the extent of NextNav's ability to install systems that were damaging. So whether they let some part of it go forward, that we had confidence the FCC understood our concerns and would it would not be a wholesale disruption to nationwide systems. Now, I would say another thing that I'm really focused on for the next year that I'd love to be able to tell you in January of 2026 is that we had made a successful effort to engage more young professionals. I don't know if there are any young professionals on the call with us this morning, but I am certain that there are many of you on the call that have young professionals on your teams. And so I'll make a call to you to help me succeed in this forecast for 2026. That I will be able to report to you a year from today that we've significantly increased the engagement of our young professionals. And I'd like to work with you all on exactly what that means on the ground. I imagine that it could mean things like certainly increased attendance at our conference and our meetings. Perhaps it also means we've developed new training possibilities online or in person that help you bring in both young professionals and new professionals. Maybe it's a second career. We want to make this more accessible and easier for you to onboard your new folks. And then a third way that might be put into practice is workforce. we know that you're all looking ahead at retirements in your own workforces, and you're looking at how you can recruit those new workers, those younger workers. And I think another way that we could engage on that front is asking the younger workers that we have successfully integrated into our industry, asking them to help us, and this is a role that we as your trade association can play. How do we put together materials and recruitment so that we know what messages help make young people at a college fair or a high school job fair interested in talking a little bit longer to that recruiter? Oh, that resonates with what I want a career to be. So I think that we've got a lot of knowledge in our existing young professionals that we can mine to have even more success in that regard. And so I'd say, Pat, those are the two things I'm focused on right now is getting a successful resolution of NextNav and working with everyone in the community to deepen our engagement and our outreach and empowering our members in their outreach to younger or new workers.
Kathryn, one of the issues that we face and work on diligently throughout the years is trying to deepen IBTTA's penetration into our member organizations. There are some organizations that maybe we only know one or two people, and there are others that we know 30 or 40 or as many as 100 people. And it's really important for us to drive deeper into the organizations to identify people who can benefit from the work of IBTTA. And it's one of the reasons that we're so focused on welcoming first-time attendees, for instance, because we know once they've come, or especially if they come a second time to an IBTTA meeting, we'll see them forever. So yeah, I like your thoughtfulness about young professionals. It's a really important area for IBTTA.
That's great. Yeah, no, I really resonate with what you're saying about welcoming the first timers. That's a great foundation that you've laid for us there, Pat.
So, Kathryn, over the recent years, IBTTA has made a big commitment to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the association in our meeting programs, through open space conversations, our scholarship and awards programs, through the work of our DEI committee, and in many other ways. And, the political climate has not always been friendly or supportive of DEI efforts. I wonder if you could share with us your thoughts about DEI and your vision for our efforts in IBTTA.
Yeah, that's a really important question, Pat. I'll share with you that that is one of the things that really drew me to IBTTA. I saw on the website the very active work of the DEI task force, and then elevated in was it in 2024 elevated to a
Yes,
full
to a
standing
committee.
committee.
Right.
Yeah, and the tremendous activity of that group. It's not just books anymore. Club, the some of the blogs that were online, the regular meetings, the scholarships, and I will tell you, when I was deciding where I wanted to go next in my own career, it was really important to me to find an organization that really lived DEI principles. They're not just political. Uh, uh, it's not a political costume you put on when it's relevant or convenient. It's something that you live or you don't. And I firmly believe that our values don't change just because the incumbents in the political powers that be may change. Our values stay the same. And I tested this. I was very active, or I was very vocal in my presentations to the search committee about DEI. And when I gave my presentation about what I thought the organization would be in a year, I talked about the DEI initiatives and how important they were. And I'm happy to report I've got absolute 100% board support for that. So I know that we are entering troubled waters. I'm disappointed personally to see many major industries, companies, household name companies that are pulling back from DEI because they believe it's the politically expedient thing to do. I don't believe that's who IBTTA is. And I'm really proud to be part of this organization for that reason.
Thank you, Kathryn. Yeah, I share that sentiment as well, and I think IBTTA is really demonstrating strong commitment and leadership in this area, and I trust that will continue in the months and many years ahead. So thank you so much for that observation. Kathryn, switching gears a little bit, I have to talk with you about physics. You have a PhD in physics from the University of Michigan. And I'm curious, and I'm sure our members are curious, what drew you to physics, number one, and what insights and perspectives does that discipline or that field provide you as an association leader?
That's great. Thank you. And I know the time has just flown. Let me just share. This has been really, really lovely, really fun spending this time with you, and it's gone so fast. But yes,
It always does.
yeah. Uh, so I loved science even as a little girl. I'll tell you, I was initially inspired because I wanted to be first an astronaut, then an astronomer, and then a physicist. And I loved science. I loved learning about science, but I will tell you what I learned is that science is a very lonely profession.
Hmm.
The way, the work of a scientist is pretty solitary. You go to a couple conferences a year, you present your work in a big group, but most of it you're alone at either the lab bench or at your computer writing up and analyzing your data. It's a pretty lonely profession. And I at some point was old enough to have a little more self-knowledge and realize, I love the field. I love the learning, but the work of a scientist is just, it's not going to be something I can sustain because, as you may have noticed, I'm a people person, and I'm something of an extrovert. So I needed to find a way that I could take that scientific knowledge, and I wanted to find a way that I could make it relevant and helpful to society, make a contribution. And the way that I found to do that was as I said again, to go to Capitol Hill and be a science advisor. And that evolved into a career in not just science, but technology and engineering policy. And then I specialized in more of the energy and the transportation sides. Your second part, how does being a physicist, is that helpful? I do think that there's a training that it gives you, and it's nice. We talked about diversity. There are, of course, many kinds of diversity, and one kind of diversity is having a different kind of background. You approach problems differently, and physics, it is an intellectual discipline. It's probably honestly most similar to a law degree,
Hmm.
but it's very different in the way it teaches you to be very methodical and take apart complex systems. Um, so I do think that the training has helped me understand how to approach complex problems and take them apart, not be intimidated by a complex challenge. And just having a different kind of training lets you have a slightly different voice in the room. So I think that's been a help.
I really resonated with your comment about if it allows you to address complex problems, then it's a useful thing. And I think addressing complex problems will come in really handy here
Oh, that's
at
good.
IBTTA and in the tolling industry. Kathryn, I'm going to make a couple of announcements and then I'm going to come back to you for some final words of wisdom. So, coming up, IBTTA has webinars and meetings. On February 18th, there's a webinar on policy trends, key insights on tolling, and user fee financing from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time. In March, we have IBTTA's Technology Summit, March 22 to 25 in Dallas, Texas. That's followed by the Finance and Road Usage Charging Conference, April 27 through 29 in Oklahoma City, and many other, a full schedule of meetings for the entire year. Please visit ibtta.org for more information about all IBTTA's upcoming meetings. Well, Kathryn, it's been a delight to have you on the program. tell us, what final words of wisdom do you have before we sign off today?
Would I would just end again by saying how privileged I feel that the board has entrusted this opportunity in me, this responsibility to help guide the association forward, and to also just let you all know that this is your association, that I am keenly aware every day that what we do, myself, the whole IBTTA staff, everything we do should be for the benefit of the membership. And so the more that we hear from you about your priorities, that's what drives us, is how we can help you solve your problems, make your lives a little bit better, make this industry a little bit stronger. That's what drives me every day, and that's going to be, my guiding light and my approach in hopefully many years ahead, working with all of you. And I could not be more delighted to have this opportunity. So I look forward to meeting with each and every one of you, I hope, at some point. And definitely love to see you at the Tech Summit. I'm very excited to meet even more people there. So see you there.
Kathryn, thank you so much, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to host this show, to introduce you to the IBTTA membership and pass the baton. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you Godspeed in everything that you do in IBTTA. And to all our viewers, be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, everybody.